Today on the Angry Catholic Show, we're going to tackle faith of the fatherless. Our angry item of the day is taking a pass on porn. And boobs are still selling beer. Welcome. You're listening to The Angry Catholic Show. I'm Paul the Angry Catholic with my wife Chris and Jim O'Day from Integrity Restored. Back in 2002, we were all told by the bishops that they were going to fix the abuse problem in the church. Not only have they not fixed the problem, it's getting worse. In 2013, a priest that our family was close with was arrested in a car with a 15-year-old boy. Since then, we've learned that our bishop knew about this priest's bad behavior and still let this priest serve in the Diocese of Scranton. In 2018, both the McCarrick Revelation and the Pennsylvania Grand Jury Report came out. It's now 2022, and none of the bishops have been looking into what was going on. None of them. Last year, Ed Locke, the music director of St. Nicholas Parish in Wilkes-Barre, was caught on video and text luring what he thought was a 15-year-old boy to his house at midnight. And our bishop has yet to inform parishioners as to why he was removed from ministry. To make matters worse, Father Lockney, who was the first seminarian Bishop Bambera ever ordained, was arrested last October for luring two minor boys to his house. Other than a general statement from the diocese, crickets. Now, the survivors of sexual abuse are being re-abused by diocesan authorities who ignore and stonewall those seeking justice. If you don't, in some way, respond to this, the situation will not change. My wife Chris and I and a group of supporters produce this show, but more Catholics have to get involved. These problems have been going on for decades right under your nose. So here we go. So I'm very excited to have Jim O'Day back with us. He's the executive director of Integrity Restored. And the mission at Integrity Restored is to help restore the integrity of individuals, spouses, and families that have been affected by pornography and pornography addiction. Integrity Restored provides education, training, encouragement, and resources to break free from pornography, heal relationships, and to assist parents in preventing and responding to pornography exposure, which is so devastating to the lives of our children. So, welcome, Jim, with us today.
Hey, Paul and Chris, what a blessing. I'm so happy to be on with you guys.
Yeah, now to get us started here, we came in with Faith of the Fatherless, and we took this right from a talk and an actual talk that you give around the country, if not the world. But each of us have a story. And as Catholics, we're supposed to take our wounds and our misdoings and leave them at the foot of the cross, because we find forgiveness and a path forward in the church. But the road, I dare say for most, is paved with the shame and pain, and it's not easily reconciled. And it's only through the truth of the church, especially when you find this truth to be a person, that we can begin to move forward. And I would love for you to, share some of this, part of this talk you gave, at least at our men's conference here a few months back.
Yeah, and everything you said is absolutely true. But the world tells us something different. And so we're constantly bombarded with the false message, the duplicity of the world. And in my case, my parents were divorced, separated when I was 2. And I didn't see my dad much. Grew up in New York City, and I would see my father maybe once a year for a couple days. And that was it. Now, there were some other male role models in my life that were good, a couple priests, couple coaches. But really where I got my identity as a man, where I got my understanding of what it meant to be a man, was from the street, from the guys I saw in the neighborhood, from media, television, music, and it was all wrong. Mm-hmm. to me, my idea growing up of in those kind of teenage formative years of being a man meant I could drink more beer than the guy sitting next to me. I could fight better than the next guy. And I could have more girlfriends, to put it kindly. Well, let's be honest, to sleep with more women than the other guys around me. And that was my thought. That was my understanding of what it meant to be a man. Nothing could be further from the truth. That's to be a boy. That's to be a child. When I guess one of the major changing moments in my life, and I was, I went to Catholic grammar school, I went to an all-boys Catholic high school, I went to St. John's University, but I always thought faith, God, was for later. As long as I didn't kill anybody, I didn't rape anybody, I was good. I was a good guy. And everybody would actually say, Jimmy's a pretty good guy. He's a good guy. But I wasn't. I was selfish. I was narcissistic. I was really only concerned about what brought me pleasure or what was fun for me, not thinking about others. And for my 21st birthday, my girlfriend at the time said to me, "Honey, I'm pregnant." That was my birthday present. And wow, I didn't know what to do. So even though, my dad and I didn't have a great relationship, still my dad, I said, I got to call somebody who knows what to do. What do I do? I was in shock. I was afraid. I was wanting to run away. And I called my dad, and he said, "Okay, how much?" And it just didn't sit right with me. So I called up an uncle, again, not real close with the guy, but called him up and said, "What do I do?" And he said, "Well, just relax. How much?" And Paul and Chris, this was the Holy Spirit. I didn't know it at the time, but that just didn't sit right with me. And so now, 34 years later, Kim and I are still married. Mm. My daughter, Jessica, is an incredible, talented, beautiful woman, wife, mom of two incredible twins. Mm. And Kim and I were blessed 10 years later with another child, Jimmy. And I think all the time, and I thank God, because I was so selfish at that point in my life. I was so wrapped up that I know there's no other way other than the Holy Spirit filling me at that moment and saying, "No, you can't do this." And when that little girl was born, and Kim had a terrible labor and delivery, over 24 hours in labor. It was brutal. But when that little girl was born, it's like this scale fell off my eyes. And I said, how could I treat women and girls the way I did? Look at this perfect little girl, this beautiful little girl. Those other women, those girls, were somebody's daughter. So it really started to open up my eye. But part of the problem, part of the wound that I continued to carry was that lack of relationship with my dad. Because we all want that. Ultimately, we want that relationship with God the Father, but we don't know that. So we try and find it with our earthly fathers, And, in my work here at Integrity Restored, I hear all the time how we as dads, myself probably included, if you interviewed my kids, fall short.
Yeah, we don't get the manual for that.
No, we don't. No, we don't. But one of the incredible blessings was my dad, even though he wanted to pay for an abortion, once that baby was born, he was not a good dad. But man, this guy was an incredible grandfather. And our relationship got so much better, Chris. My dad and I would talk every week. We would see each other multiple times in the year so he could see his granddaughter. And we became very close. And about 13 years ago now, when my dad got sick, he got cancer, I got a call from his girlfriend that he was living with in Florida. And she said, you need to get down here. I flew down, and I met the doctor in the hallway in the ICU. And he said, oh, you must be Mr. O'Day's son. You look just like him. My father and I looked very much alike. And he said, look, he's not doing well. You're here. He really wants to talk to you about the arrangements he wants to make. Sure. So I go in, I have my pad, my pen, I'm writing down, my father wants to do this, he wants that, don't do this, don't do that. I get everything down, and he says to me, okay, Jimmy, you can leave now. And I said, Pop, no, I'm not going to do that. You have to do something for me. What, do you need money? I said, no, Pop, I want to pray with you. Get the hell out of here. I'm not doing that. I said, well, I don't care what you do. I'm going to be by the side of this bed praying. And I kneel down and I start praying out loud the Chaplet of Divine Mercy. And in comes the nurse, and she kneels next to me. And some Filipino lady that was just visiting somebody hears us, and she comes in, and the three of us are by the side of the bed, praying the Chaplet of Divine Mercy. And we finish, and I look up, and there's tears running down my father's face. And he says, Jimmy, get me a priest. For the first time in over 40 years, he had confession. He received the Eucharist. He had the anointing of the sick. And 2 weeks later, he went home from the hospital and married his girlfriend in the church. And he lived for another 6 months after that, attending Mass every Sunday. When he couldn't attend Mass, the priest would bring communion to him. And on the day he died, I was there with him, and I held him on my lap to sit him up so that he could receive communion for the last time. He received our Lord, and I put him back in bed, and he went to sleep. What an incredible gift for me.
Wow.
As I'm thinking about this, this powerful story you just told, and it really resonates. How were you able to forgive for all the times that he hadn't been there? Because that can be such an obstacle, I think, for people with their parents.
It was, Chris, it was really, really hard. And I don't think it ever would have happened if I didn't have kids. But because of my children, because of my marriage to Kim, I started to see my own failings, my own shortcomings, the times when I really fell short. And so it helped me gain an understanding of, how he screwed up too. And honestly, and maybe this is a little bit selfishly, but I always said, as my kids were younger, there, but for the grace of God go I. Because marital problems happen. Sometimes it feels like it's easier to walk away or not engage with your children. But we have to. We have to stand and we have to engage with our kids. Because otherwise the world will take them, like the world took me for a long, long time. You know, I was working as VP of Sales and Marketing for a company in the defense business. We were doing really, really well. I was out with my boss, who was one of the owners of the company, and we're celebrating a big contract. You know, I was like the joke. You know, you hear about those $800 hammers that you sell to the military.
Yeah.
Well, we were one of those contractors. So we sold a lot to the military. It was a very profitable company. So we're out celebrating. You know, we have an $800 bottle of wine, an incredible meal. And my boss, Bernie, what's his name, Bernie, he looks at me and he says, you know, Jimmy, God wants me to tell you something. And I'm sure I said, oh, crap. No, come on, we're celebrating. I don't want to do this. Why do you have to ruin a good thing? But Bernie was a faith-filled man. And he said to me, Jim, you're not a good husband. You're not a good father. And you're certainly not a good Catholic. Of course, being the New York City boy that I am, I get really defensive. I'm arguing with him back and forth. How can you say that? What are you talking about? You don't know anything. Blah, 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 blah. I went upstairs to the hotel room. And, you know, thank God for the Gideons. I opened the drawer and I pulled out the Bible and I did that whole stupid thing. I wet my finger. Skimmed through the pages and I say, all right, God, you want to say something to me? Here. You led me to Romans. And in that hotel room, I read through all of Romans. And I'm not ashamed to say it today. At the time, I would have been. But I knelt by the side of that bed and sobbed for like 2 hours. Because he was right. I wasn't a good father. I wasn't a good husband. And I certainly wasn't a good Catholic. Because I didn't know what it meant to be that. Mm-hmm. I thought, just like my misconstrued understanding of manhood growing up, as a quote-unquote grown-up, 20-something, 30-something-year-old man, I thought as long as my wife could go out and buy whatever she wanted, I was good. I was the provider. That was the end of my responsibility in the relationship. And so I sobbed and I knelt and I cried. I cried from the depths of my soul. And I came home and I remember clearly it was a Thursday night. And Kim and I are in bed and we're laying there and looking up at the ceiling fans going around, spinning and spinning. I don't know about you, Chris, but Kim can never have enough fans to sleep.
Yeah, that's Paul.
Polar vortex in my bedroom, but
yes, it'll be 8 degrees tonight, but Paul will have the fan going.
So, I mean, it's such a thing. Either you have that or you don't. But so we're looking at the ceiling fan, and I said to Kim, honey, everything's got to change. We got to go to church. Like every weekend. It doesn't matter if there's a big game on or we've got to go to confession. We've got to do this. We've got to do that. And Kim's a New York City girl too, and God love her. She doesn't flinch. She doesn't even look over at me. She just says, are you on drugs? Where did this come from, right? But that began our journey. That began our journey back, our journey home, our journey to the one true faith. And it wasn't easy. Kim at the time wasn't Catholic. She was, baptized Catholic as a baby, and then evangelical for a little while, and then Pentecostal for a little while, and then, like me, nothing for a longer while.
Sure.
And so we really had to start over and, like babies in the faith, learn and grow. And, God blessed us with great people that came into our lives, incredible things that happened. But you're still carrying those wounds.
Sure. And I think what is so inspiring about your story, and I think what resonates with so many of us, is the moment of real conversion happens when you have a moment of humility and you say, like, I call it my I'm a loser moment, and you just accept, like everyone else, that we are struggling here and we need him.
We're doing our lousy best. All right, you can listen to us on KCRD-FM, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Podbean, Google Play, and Spotify, and find us, as always, at theangrycatholic.com. Send us an email to mail@theangrycatholic.com. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. We're back. You're listening to The Angry Catholic Show. I'm Paul the Angry Catholic with my wife Chris and Jim O'Day from Integrity Restored. So for our angry item, we came in with taking a pass on porn. To get us started, many priests will tell you that they hear over and over the sin surrounding pornography. So I guess this is where my question begins. If countless families and relationships have been affected, if not destroyed, due to some sort of issue, maybe starting with pornography, then why isn't the church leading the way in addressing this issue? I mean, I never have heard anything spoken from our bishop, let alone any bishop that I know of, and therefore priests, about pornography. I mean, you hear nothing. You hear crickets. And why is this?
Well, I think, first of all, we have to kind of identify what I call camps. And I think there's probably more, but I think there's 3 primary camps in our church. The first, and there are some bishops doing some really cool work.
Good.
In this area and really getting behind it. The USCCB as a group came out with Creating Me a Clean Heart, a pastoral letter about the problem of pornography, and you can download it for free online. I recommend everybody does that. But I see 3 camps. The first is the small group of bishops and clergy, priests, who get it. And you know what? They're sick of it. And so they're trying to do something about it. We've got about 300 priests trained in the U.S. right now through Integrity Restored. They went through 4.5 days of intensive training, how to deal with this problem in the confessional, in spiritual direction, and sacramental prep. So it's a start. Then you have another group of bishops that are afraid of the problem. There's been so much scandal in the church around sexual issues. They just won't deal with it. They put their head in the sand, and they hide. And then the third group of clergy, I think, just doesn't think it's that big of a problem. And so our job, the Angry Catholic's job, Integrity Restored's job, the Catholic in the pews job, is to make sure that crap stops today. This is a problem. Paul and Chris, I cannot stress enough. This is affecting everybody. Every family you know. Everybody in that pew knows, and if they're not struggling themselves, they know and love somebody who is. Mm-hmm. I promise you, it's that prevalent. The average age of exposure today is 8 or 9 years old in the U.S.
Wow. Do you do any work with the seminaries? Because I'm going to take a stab that in this day and age with technology and the generations coming in, it's got to be something that they need to deal with? I don't know. Are they dealing with it head on in seminary formation? Do you know?
So starting to, thanks be to God, right? So we're getting more and more seminaries reaching out to us. We've actually put together what we're calling a seminary training plan to incorporate in 1 year of formation. The seminarians will they'll understand the psychology and the science, kind of the neurobiology of what's happening with pornography and why it happens. They'll understand the spiritual impacts of it. They'll understand the relational impacts of it. And so then when they get ordained and go into ministry, they're going to have tools to help that person. And I can't just say men anymore, to help that person who comes into a confessional. Because more and more women are struggling.
Sure.
And what do we do? Don't tell them, say 3 Hail Marys and don't do it again. That doesn't work. So here's what you can do. And finally, seminaries are starting to get it. Now, there's another interesting situation we're faced with in seminary. 20 years ago, as a seminary rector, you would probably ask, son, have you ever seen dirty pictures? Today, as a seminary rector, you have to ask, son, when's the last time you looked at porn?
Exactly.
Sure.
It's that common. So these guys, we need to help them understand why it's happening, what's happened in their brains, and in the brains of all their friends and family members, and what to do about it, how to break free, and then how to help others break free. And so I'm really, really excited about that work for Integrity Restored.
Well, that's one of the most encouraging things I've heard, and I don't even know how long, that you've trained 300 priests, that there was enough interest in whatever diocese you were in to have you come in or them go to you and train 300 priests on how to start dealing with this. That's encouraging.
Well, and I can tell you locally, to you guys, we had priests from Scranton. We had a few priests from Scranton, but, Harrisburg, Allentown, Philadelphia. PA was really very supportive of this, and then COVID knocked all that because
Sure.
it was in person. So
Sure.
Sure.
Hopefully we'll turn that around, because it's great. 300 priests is awesome. They're from all over the country. It's a beautiful thing, but it's a drop in the bucket. Every priest needs this.
Oh, absolutely. Because not only are they hearing it, but let's just be honest. I'm sure they themselves are struggling.
Look, they're men.
Yeah.
And just like I tell husbands, prospective husbands, guys in pre-Cana, well, once I get married and I can have sex with my wife, I won't struggle with porn anymore. No, it'll be worse.
That's right. Won't be a very good husband.
It's the same thing when you're going to be ordained. Being ordained doesn't magically take this struggle away.
Yeah, and we're gonna get into that a little bit in the third segment. But Jim, real quick, how does a group or a parish or a diocese get in touch with you for this training?
So just go on our website, integrityrestored.com. There's an information form you can fill out. It will come right to me, or Jimo, Jimo, at integrityrestored.com. Shoot me an email. We will go wherever, whenever, however. This is to me, one of the most important things we're doing, because here's what happens. If we can equip and help and train a priest, the ripple effect of what he can do with that is tenfold, 100-fold, 1,000-fold, because of how many people are going to come to him. This is over 80, 90, 95% of confessions every weekend, every Saturday. They're hearing this sin repeatedly. And they haven't been given the tools to help those people break free of those chains.
If you're concerned about these issues, it's very important for us to share this information. Chris and I, along with a group of supporters, publish this show and want to ask for your help by sharing it. Email it, post it on social media, text it, or just tell somebody about it. You can be sure if you don't, then nothing will change. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Back. You're listening to The Angry Catholic Show. I'm Paul the Angry Catholic with my wife Chris and Jim O'Day from Integrity Restored. So for the final segment, we came in with Boobs Are Still Selling Beer. Basically, I wanted to talk about how men being fathers in the church are not standing up and taking a stand, especially when it comes to pornography. I mean, we can talk until we're blue in the face about porn, but the reality is until fathers put their foot down and take a stand and take action, and at this point, and Jim, we had talked about this on your podcast, any action at this point, like just start talking about it, nothing's going to change. And it's going to be up to the men to demand from their bishop and priest that they speak out of the harms of pornography. I mean, And Jim, I definitely want to touch on here because I think it's so important. And it's, again, something else that we talked about on your show, that if we as fathers and really as parents allow our shame to keep us from speaking about the topic, you know, how can we expect the bishops to take the lead in most cases, or priests to take the lead, if we can't even touch this discussion?
Amen. Absolutely. I tell parents all the time, the most important thing you can do, it starts with your own family, right? So it doesn't start at the parish or the diocese. It starts at your own family. And you have to, as a parent, particularly as a father, be having these conversations with your children early and often. It's not a one and done. And the hardest thing is you got to check your own shame, your own broken sexual narrative. You got to check it at the door because your child doesn't have that. Don't let them get one. Stop it. Prevent it from happening. You know what it is. You went through it. Don't let that be the path for your child. And the same goes for our spiritual fathers, the priests in the parish, the bishops, the cardinals, the Pope. Don't let your own shame, your own fear, your own guilt stop you from preventing this epidemic, this plague, this scourge in your flock.
Yep.
And so often as human beings, that's what we do. It's not easy. Look, I can promise you, I never in a million years would have thought I'd be doing this for a living. Running around talking about porn. Wow. But, you know, it's the best work I've ever done. I love it.
Yeah, Felix and I were joking before the show, and I was telling him, I was joking about how I was preparing for this show on porn.
Yeah, right.
I know.
Exactly.
I don't think I've heard you say that as much as like the last couple months, talking to Jim and everything like that. You're usually not the one who likes to talk about these things.
Oh, I know. Usually I leave that up to Kristen.
You know, and I like how
She's
you
the
say,
porn
Jim.
talker and
I'm the
sex
porn
talker.
talker. Yeah, that's me. That doesn't sound right. You know, I like how you said fathers in particular, because, you know, just raising the kids that we've been raising, you know, I'm that mom who we would go by Victoria's Secret and we would avoid it in the mall, and my kids would avoid it on purpose, because if we didn't, then I'd start and I'd be upset and I'd be ranting and I'd point to a worker who's there and say, I can't believe you're showing this stuff. You should be ashamed. You know, there was, I remember, I think it was A&E, American Eagle, had this horrible thing, like this bra and underwear lady picture right in their main window at the mall one time, and I was furious about that.
Right?
Yes,
Huge,
I was furious.
Yep.
And so my kids think I'm crazy, but if a dad says it, it means something.
Well, and here's the important thing for fathers to remember, and I know I hear all the time. Well, I spoke to my son. Okay, what about your daughter?
Yeah.
Because for her to have that male perspective from her dad, who she loves, and who's her superhero, that will be the most protection you can give that child. Because she'll say, when the boys are telling her, and it starts around 10 or 11 years old for girls now. The average girl gets about 15 to 20 requests for nudes a week.
Oh, my gosh.
From boys in their class. When they say that to her, she'll say, no way.
Yep.
I almost said a bad word. We're not doing that. Because she'll have that worth. So fathers' impact on their daughters, it's immeasurable, right? If you protect that child and you train that child and you let her know her beauty has nothing to do with what other people are saying. Her value is not in her body, even though boobs still sell beer.
Yep.
That's not what we want our daughters to think of themselves. And so the father can have a huge impact in that.
Which brings me to my next point, I guess, is, and I think I'm calling all of us on the carpet, my husband and myself included.
Not me.
If we know, twofold, if we know that girls are getting requests, like why do we let these kids have these phones? I mean, actually, we just went to a phone that's not smart finally, but it took the fifth kid to do that.
Yeah.
Like we were so late to the party with that one. And then why do we sit there and watch football games and watch the commercials where the boobs are selling the beer and watch the cheerleaders whose boobs are pouring out of a shirt? Like, why do we allow that?
I think there's many reasons for that, because I actually did a little bit of, I looked online a little bit before the show earlier today, last night, whatever. And I was just trying to find out outside the church what outfits are saying. Like I think it was Psychology Today was showing these potential harms of the porn as far as the compulsion and correlations in the brain. Jim, you know a lot more about that than we do. But then they said in the article, some people can watch porn occasionally and not suffer significant side effects. So obviously they mean there are side effects regardless. But other articles, I don't want to say I was shocked, but other articles went on to say that, it wasn't as harmful, or they were using possible. It was always that out, which even, as fathers, it's easier for us if there's an out. It's easier for us not to discuss these things. But it was all over these articles, that idea of, well, it's not really that bad. A little bit is okay and can be helpful.
Yeah, it's a marital aid. Yeah, right. Okay, so two points. First, to Chris's point, I think, look, we're never going to change human nature, right? And sex sells, period. End of story. In fact, part of our brain is just hardwired to zero in on anything that's stimulating like that. And it's how we're built. It's God's amazing design for our bodies, because procreation is good. And so because our brains are wired that way, look, the marketing companies, the media companies, they know that. So they're going to tap into that. But what we can do as parents is take those opportunities and use them as teaching moments.
Sure.
To talk about how it's not just about how beautiful your body is. And why are these companies doing this? Well, to get your money, right? It's really insidious. They just know that that's how people's brains work. And so when you start explaining the science of it to children, you have a much better reaction than when you just make it about a moral issue. Because if you just make it about a moral issue, the whole world is against you as a parent, and all their friends are doing it. But when you tell them, this is addicting, this is what's going to happen, you could, as you know, even in England now, there's studies where they're giving Viagra to boys as young as 14 or 15.
Oh my gosh.
Because the boys have watched so much porn that their brains have rewired and now they're suffering from erectile dysfunction. And so instead of taking away the problem, they say, no, just take this pill. Well, as parents, we can talk about all that. Well, that's number one. And then Paul, to your point, I think one of the things, there's a great quote that I put up on my wall by Winston Churchill. And it says, continuous effort, not strength, nor intelligence, is the key to unlocking our potential. You know what? This is a battle that's not going to go away. For dads, for moms, for children, for priests, for bishops. We just got to keep moving forward. Talk about it. Yeah. Bring it out in the open. If we leave it in the dark, sin abounds. But if we bring it to the light.
Yeah, and it's so unfortunate because the church and its teaching have the answer. And I think that goes back into the segment before this that we talked about. It would just be invaluable for priests and bishops to get on this bandwagon and let's address these things, because the church has the solution. I mean, the marriage and the family, it is the solution. I think young people just don't have any idea, especially young married couples, I think. And then there's so many couples that aren't even getting married, of, you know, the joy and the beauty of marriage as it's designed by God. And they don't realize, 'cause I guess you can't, because there's so many forces like fighting against us in the world that we're being bombarded with. But if we could just get these young couples and young people to realize that it is magnificent to live the way God intended us to, there's such joy and happiness. And I just, you don't think you can see that in, just going along and not knowing that. Well,
it's right, because the kids don't like to hear this, but I will say all the time, you want to have the greatest sex of your life, be married and be chaste with each other. Like it truly is.
Absolutely.
And then stick it out, and stay together, because you really learn about each other. And, down the road, just see it through till death do you part, be chaste. You're going to have the greatest, sex of your life. That's just a fact. And,
well, and I tell couples all the time, Chris, and this is where we're screwed up societally. But look, really good intimacy doesn't start in the bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
It starts in the kitchen. It starts at the breakfast table. It's all about communication. And the only way you can get really good at it is to do it for a long time.
Exactly.
It's the truth. And one of the things that, there's great hope, Paul, to me. There's great hope with this battle. If we think back 25 years, roughly, when Pope John Paul was doing the weekly audiences and developed the theology of the body. Well, look, a lot of Catholics, a lot of priests, a lot of bishops, they did not want to hear that, right? It was talking about sex. But now theology of the body is mainstream Catholicism.
Yeah.
So there's great hope. It's just we're really slow.
And maybe it's older people like us who've been married a long time too, as talking with your kids about porn, but maybe also just making them aware, how happy and how much joy you have with the father or the mother, and it being in a marriage, and how, just letting them see that it really is great.
Of us do that, right? We often don't. The family relationships have become very transactional. And we don't share with each other. Look, we don't share with our spouses enough. That's that communication intimacy again. And we certainly don't with our kids. And I think one of the things I tell young couples all the time, and this is my story again, here we go. When we came back to the church, we got really excited. We were zeal, fully on fire. And so we had crucifixes all over the house, and we had religious statues and Bible quotes and all kinds of stuff. Not in my bedroom. No, that was weird. I didn't want Jesus over the bed looking at us. Oh, no. And it took me a while to learn how stupid that was. First of all, God invented sex. He knows what it's supposed to be. He knows how beautiful and incredible and wonderful it is. So what we need to do, men and women, husbands and wives, is before you're physically intimate with your spouse, pray. And my prayer is really simple. Lord, help me to touch her how she needs to be touched. Help me to love her how she needs to be loved. That's it. And you want to talk about good sex? Invite the Holy Spirit into your bedroom.
This is where, let's be honest. Are you uncomfortable?
No, I just didn't know what to say next. But I think we're gonna stop it right after that, and then I'll just come in with, and you can find Jim and Integrity Restored at integrityrestored.com. How do you follow that up?
I know.
That
was great.
I get all the time. I really do. All the time. Even from priests, like, what?
Yeah.
But it's true, guys. Stop. God knows everything about us. He knows all our crazy, kinky fantasies. He knows all that. Stop. Invite him in.
All right, you can find Jim O'Day at integrityrestored.com. Thank you for listening to The Angry Catholic Show. Send us an email to mail@theangrycatholic.com. Don't forget to share this show any way you can. I want to thank all the listeners who sent emails this week. Thank you, Chris, and a special thanks to Jim O'Day from Integrity Restored. Stay active, stay alert, and stay angry.
This has been a production of Dumb Ox Media, Inc. All rights reserved.